Hi, welcome to Literary World. I am your host, Analia. In this week's episode, we look at the Caribbean short story, Some People Are Meant to Live Alone by Frank Collymore. On our show today, we have Denise, Catherine, Hema, and Katrina. The plot structure also creates a backbone to the short story, Some People Are Meant to Live Alone. So what type of plot is presented in the story? Of utmost importance is the title of your story. It provides insight as to what is to be expected in the discourse. So question to you. How does the title of this short story advance to the storyline?
The plot is presented in chronicle order in the story. The reader is introduced to characters of the story where the plot of the story revolves around Uncle Arthur. The plot is developed through dialogue and the telling of tales throughout the story between Bill and his mom and Bill and Uncle Arthur. The use of the ellipses throughout the telling of the tales of Uncle Arthur's lifestyle from both Uncle Arthur and Bill's mom helps create the suspense of the story. The literary device flashback is also used when Uncle Arthur tells the story of his friend Jones and Smith to explain the reason why some people are meant to live alone. The title of the story implies what the plot of the story can be structured around, such as the theme of loneliness and human condition and a continued motif presented throughout the story.
The story is the narrator's point of view and tone. Its impact on the way the story is presented to the readers. Discuss the narrative view in Frank Collymmore's manuscript.
The story is told from a first-person perspective by an autodidactic narrator. This narrator, Bill, pushes the story forward as he is the one who goes to seek out Uncle Arthur and finds out his secrets. He also cannot be trusted because he is a subjective narrator, as he seems to identify with Arthur. No one can tell if his account of what happened on that day is really true. No one can know if his recollection of that period of his life is accurate.
It is through characterization Collymore is able to present his characters and their relationships. Compare the characters of Bill Church and Uncle Arthur.
Bill Church is the protagonist of the story and he evokes the mood and the interest throughout. Bill appears to be a member of the middle class and uses standard English as his main form of discourse. He, at first, appears to be a young man full of hope and curiosity. Bill reaches out to his Uncle Arthur in an attempt to understand him. Bill shows a sense of maturity when he finally acknowledges the myth that he and his siblings promoted about Uncle Arthur to his mother. The protagonist shows that he is more mature than he was when he was a child and afraid of Uncle Arthur. However, he is established to be naive as he has true faith in his uncle's normalcy. Ultimately, Bill proves to be too susceptible and innocent to face the truth about Uncle Arthur. The story which the old man tells him affects Bill so much that it influences his behavior and his life follows the same pattern as Uncle Arthur's did. Uncle Arthur, however, propels the story forward. He is also a member of the middle class in the post-colonial era. He indulges in high culture and it seems that he is knowledgeable about European art and enjoys contemporary settings. Uncle Arthur makes living alone seem ideal and perfect. He is fun and happy in the story. However, he is haunted by his conscience because of the lengths he has gone to in order to ensure his own happiness. The dark side of Uncle Arthur's reality is revealed to be a vicious attempt to guarantee contentment, although he makes it seem like living alone is worth the burden of a heavy conscience. He is ultimately Bill's role model as the story he relates shapes the young man's life.
It's through powerful language use that Collymore is able to exhibit literary techniques such as dialogue, syntax, to name a few. Discuss the relevance of literary techniques in Some People Are Meant to Live Alone.
Well, Analia, literary techniques are a very significant aspect of any narrative or form of prose. They give the story life and vitality, and keep readers engaged by what they are reading so that the story's message can be transmitted to them. Collymore employs several techniques which express his unique form of writing. He uses dialogue, diction, and syntax, ellipses, and literary devices such as repetition, foreshadow, and irony. Dialogue is used as a way to reveal important information about Uncle Arthur. He seems to be a character that is surrounded in mystery, but dialogue in the story helps to clear up this mysteriousness. Diction and syntax make the story seem more natural and real. Barbados is said to be one of the more English islands of the Caribbean because of its past British colonization, and the story reflects this. Ellipses in the story are used for several different things. It is used to show continuity of conversation as shown on page 2, where Bill is speaking to his mother. It expresses an attempt at memory jogging, as in the instance where Uncle Arthur is trying to remember who Bill is. The ellipses also express a natural pause in a character's speech, and finally, they indicate a gap in a character's speech or thoughts, which takes place on a number of occasions within the story. This gap also contributes to the development of suspense within the narrative, because readers are left wondering what they have missed. Suspense is also built when Bill's mother lets slip the fact that Uncle Arthur's friend may not have drowned himself. This takes place on page 2 of the narrative. She says, "Then the friend, another of life's failures, got drowned." She does not state outright that perhaps he was murdered, but the pause in her speech makes readers think this. As mentioned before, Collymore employs several literary devices throughout his story. He uses repetition, which is used more than once within the story in order to emphasize certain things. The repetition of the word mystery, for example, emphasizes the aloneness of Uncle Arthur and also emphasizes how little is actually known about him. The word old places attention on how rundown Uncle Arthur's house is, especially due to the fact that there is no one to tell him to look after it. It also serves to reiterate how surrounded by mystery Uncle Arthur is. The repetition of the phrase, "some people are meant to live alone," plays on the title of the story in order to place emphasis on how alone Uncle Arthur is, and how alone he likes to be, and to show how far he was willing to go to stay alone. Irony. Uncle Arthur is constantly described as being quiet to mild and meek-looking. It is ironic that someone with this description was capable of murder. He is also described as being light-hearted, which is also ironic because it is unexpected that someone who committed a murder could be so light-hearted, especially with something such as a murder on their conscience. Foreshadow is seen in the story when Bill actually ends up following a similar life pattern as Arthur, after wondering on page 5 if perhaps living a life like the one Arthur is living wouldn't be satisfying. Like Arthur, he marries young and gets divorced. He even ends up getting Arthur's house when he dies, and at the end of the story, he thinks of repairing it and going to live there, indicating that perhaps he too is going to be a mysterious recluse.
Overall, conventional devices of short storytelling must be carefully chosen to create a magnificent discourse with coherence and cohesion. As such, a relevant title, plot, word choice, narrative point of view, development of characters through dialogue and detailed description with the construction of themes are qualities which make a short story unravel smoothly. These miscellaneous attributes of short story aided in effectively portraying the Caribbean myth, loneliness, memory, death, and childhood in Some People Are Meant to Live Alone. Thank you for watching Short Story Wars. We hope you enjoyed the show.